Is Game Freak lazy? In today's video, I want to explore that very question. It's simple. With the National Dex movement, people are wanting Game Freak to bring back the National Dex for Pokémon Sword and Shield. As Game Freak have mentioned and noted, all of the Pokémon will not be available in Pokémon Sword and Shield. So the question becomes, why? Is it due to incompetence, laziness, or can Game Freak just not do it? Before we jump into today's video though, Amino Apps has reached out to me and asked me to sponsor a video and let you guys know they exist.
Hey, so check this out. The Amino app recently updated to include a new feature called Stories. My first story was me detailing and discussing and talking about my posters in the background back here. And I showed exactly just what I have up, how I hung them up and framed them. Download the app, search for Protomario under users, and you'll find my story come right up. This is a great place to link up with people who like to play the games that you like to play as well. I would greatly appreciate the support, and I hope to see you there soon.
You might have noticed that Game Freak, the Pokemon Company, Nintendo, all work together to produce Pokemon games. The point is, most Pokemon games get a lot of help from fellow developers who've been around for over 30 years. And Game Freak is no slouch either, being around since the early 90s. So, what happened with Pokemon Sword and Shield? Why are Mega Evolutions removed? Why are Z moves removed? Especially when you consider that Mega Evolutions could buff Pokemon that otherwise would have never been used. Yes, of course, you could go out on a limb and use a Caterpie in an online battle, or maybe a Pidgeotto, but most people wouldn't consider those to be elite Pokemon. With Mega Evolutions, it made them extremely viable. And with Z moves, it gave Pokemon that otherwise didn't have extremely great move choices some really cool, unique moves to use. It was entertaining, it was fun, and most of all, it was an added feature. But along with these features, the Pokemon themselves are being removed, and a lot of people are attacking this, and claiming that we should bring back the National Dex for Pokemon Sword and Shield. Currently, a lot of people are estimating that only half the Pokemon will return, probably popular Pokemon. Makes sense. I don't really want to capture these old Pokemon that suck, that I'm never going to use. It's just a chore, right? But at the same time, when you think about it, a lot of people enjoy that chore. A lot of people have fond memories of using Lickitung, or maybe a Mr. Mime, or these Pokemon that aren't extremely amazing, but they are usable. The question becomes, when we look at Sword and Shield, why are they removing them? Is it out of laziness? Is it out of incompetence? So, a lot of people have come to the conclusion that it must be their decision that they've included and created so many Pokemon in the previous games that they are just too lazy, they don't want to delay the game, and they want to push it out. Therefore, they are not going to include these Pokemon. People have cited the reason is laziness because they have the previous 3D models already done from Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon and Sun and Moon, the previous generation's Pokemon game. So, if that's the case, why not put them all in the game? Things get worse when you actually look at the trailer itself, and you see some gameplay as well. In the 21 minutes of Pokemon Sword and Shield gameplay from the Nintendo Treehouse for E3, they showed the gameplay and it was underwhelming to say the least. A lot of people have compared the gameplay to what a Nintendo 64 could do, and I can't say that I completely disagree. But I do think a lot of people are wearing jaded lenses when we look at this. The environment. It looks terrible. And that's no exaggeration. Some of the trees look like they're ripped straight out of Ocarina of Time on the Nintendo 64. But then, we're not really playing the game for the trees, right? But if you look at the land, it looks very flat, drab, and dead, to say the least. So, we're not really playing Pokemon for the way the land looks, right? We're playing it for the battle. A lot of people have pointed out that previous games, like Pokemon XD, Gale of Darkness, have way better Pokemon animations. And that was almost 20 years ago. Things like that. It's been almost a decade, and they have better looking Pokemon games from the N64 and GameCube days. Pretty crazy, right? But again, when you're wearing rose-tinted glasses and you're not really playing those games from back in the day, I think it can become easy to understand why you would be a bit biased against the way this game looks. Take a look here. I'll compare this game's gameplay with some of the gameplay of The Legend of Zelda Breath of the Wild. And you'll start to see that the world itself is almost identical in nature. Although Zelda Breath of the Wild is extensively better looking. Now for me, I completely hate Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think it looks terrible. I think it looks drab. It's very dull. I didn't like the plot. I didn't like the story. I didn't like a lot of the characters. I thought the bosses in the dungeons were very, very lame and boring. But at the end of the day, I'm not a lot of people. And a lot of people loved Zelda Breath of the Wild. Which obviously is the direction that Game Freak wants to go with this. So if you compare the two, and you look at them trailer by gameplay by trailer, you could see that it almost looks identical. It really does. Whoever is working with Game Freak, the Pokemon company, whoever from Nintendo, definitely brought their experience with rendering the open world of Zelda Breath of the Wild here. There's also something that you should probably note. In the Pokemon gameplay, you can look pretty far away. In previous entries, in previous games, there used to be these elements called fog. It's basically just not being able to see very, very far away to save the game's RAM, memory, and video RAM. It cuts down on the processing power because the processor doesn't have to render all of that stuff. That's where we get poppin'. So when you're walking along and you see these Pokemon randomly just appear, that's from that. It saves on a lot of the resources allocated to the hardware. And here, in Pokemon Sword and Shield, you can see pretty far away. And it's pretty nice. It's something that has come a long way in terms of gaming technology. So Sword and Shield does have some things going for it. The only bad thing is that it looks completely boring, empty, and drab. There's literally nothing I want to explore about this area. It's just a couple of trees. It's a field. There's a few Pokemon walking around. Alright, I got you. So clearly the main focus is on the battle portions, which a lot of people have raised the concern that the animations and the lack of Pokemon are going to cause this game to be very, very negative. And so, that's why I cited what I did previously about Zelda Breath of the Wild. The question becomes, is Game Freak lazy, incompetent, or is there something else going on? I 100% do not agree that they are lazy, incompetent, or that they just don't want to put all the Pokemon in. Rather, that there's something else going on with it. We have this service that's supposed to link all of these games together and allow us to move our Pokemon from these games freely. This is a modern day Pokemon bank, but with all of the modern games that we have, taking our Pokemon from multiple generations and putting them in the new games. So why wouldn't you have every single Pokemon in Pokemon Sword and Shield to allow that to happen? My best guess would be in the future that there's going to be some type of DLC content that's going to come out to allow people to get these Pokemon in the future. But the reason that they are pushing this game out so quickly is unknown at this time. I personally believe it's to compensate for the Let's Go Pikachu and Let's Go Eevee release. And as you can tell, with the previous citations and comparisons of the world environment to Breath of the Wild, you know, there's no question, somebody from Nintendo is working with them to make this area look almost identical to the way it was in Breath of the Wild. Therefore, they clearly have some developers coming over from Nintendo to give and weigh in with advice on a new open world Pokemon adventure. You'd have to be a complete and total idiot to not take the advice of a company who literally just put a new open world Zelda game out on the Nintendo Switch and had it be the most successful game there is. And yet, here we are with the Pokemon game and its first entrant into what is to be considered a completely new open world Pokemon game. So, that said, the incompetence, the laziness, it's not there. It's something else. For whatever reason, for whatever excuse is given, there is something else behind Game Freak and the Pokemon Company's decision to not include all of the Pokemon. To make this game look bland, drab, dry, and not as exciting as it once was. As much as people are going to criticize this and claim, look at where we've come, look at how far we've gone from the 8-bit games. Some people would say that the 8-bit games are much more endearing, that some of the Game Boy Advance games look better just for the simple fact that their graphical stylings are limited by the graphical capabilities, that some of the older games like Stadium, Gale, XD Darkness, and other games like Coliseum look great in comparison with their cartoony aspects and less realistic worlds. So it really does come down to your personal opinion. If you like Zelda Breath of the Wild, you'll probably like the environments of this world. If you liked previous games that didn't include all the Pokemon, you'll probably like this game a lot. But if you didn't enjoy those, then this game most definitely is not suited for you. Ladies and gentlemen, I've been your host, Protomario, and I just wanted to discuss the National Dex movement, how this looked completely, the environments, the animations, and what's going on with the Pokemon Company and Game Freak. If you guys enjoyed this video, I would greatly appreciate a like. Let other people know I exist, just for the simple fact that it's free. And I'll see you guys in the next video. You can click subscribe to stay up to date and see me then. But otherwise, good gaming, God bless, and I'll see you in the future, Pokemon Masters.